Welcome back, students who are taking financial accounting, and in this series of videos we are working on the assigned homework problems from the digital study guide for chapter 11, and these are the short exercises. Note, accounting is about understanding the concept and then applying that understanding to the situation at hand. If you get the application aspect wrong, that is one thing and is easily remedied by watching someone else work the problem. However, if you don't understand the concepts, that is a whole other thing. Watching a problem worked out will not help if you don't understand the underlying concepts. Go back and study the text material again and watch the theory videos. If you still don't understand the concepts, then either email or telephone an instructor to get help with that understanding. Right, so here for exercise 11-9, operating activities, direct method. And it says here's the following data related to the cash transactions. And just notice how this information is presented, okay, versus the last one. All right, in the last exercise. In this last exercise, it was presented in a paragraph type of form, okay? And remember what I had said in the last video, that depending upon the way the data is given to you, you may have to actually do a calculation in order to understand the effect in the cash position, all right? Here, the information is being given to you in more like a table format, all right? But it's still basically the same information, right? So it says prepare the statement of cash flows using the direct method, and the cash balance at June 30th, 2013 was $23,000. Right, so I'm going to shrink that up a little bit, and I'm also going to move it, right? Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, I need to shrink it up just a little bit more because I need a little bit more space. All right, again, I'm not worrying about formatting issues. Go back to the last video and watch the beginning of it as far as my thoughts about formatting issues. Yeah, this is my work papers, okay? So I'm taking shortcuts, I'm abbreviating, I'm not formatting to the T. But when I do create my solution, all right, it's going to look like the solution in the solution manual when I create that statement. So if it's part of an exam, you have to create it just like what's in the solution manual. Don't be taking all the shortcuts. These are my working papers that I'm working on, all right? They don't have to be perfect, but when I present it to somebody else, okay, meaning if I'm taking an exam and I have to create a statement of cash flow, well, I'm giving that statement of cash flow to somebody else, then my formatting has to be proper and look at the solutions in order to see how that is. Right? So with that admonition, this is my heading. And of course, the heading is going to be dated the same as my income statement or statement of retained earnings. And like I said in the last video, I like to just set it up, create the structure of the statement before I actually do any of the work. So I'm going to have my cash flow from operating activities, my cash flow from my investing activities, my cash flow from my financing activities, and then I'm going to have my net, and then it's either an increase or decrease in cash, okay? A net increase in cash. Right. Now that I have this set up, the structure set up, now I'm going to actually start filling in the different sections by looking at what affects my operating activities. So when I look at this data here, remember, we're talking about what is cash. Right? When we're doing the direct method, we're looking at what is cash. Right? So proceeds of dividends, payment of dividends, that is not an operating activity. Issuance of stock is not an operating activity. This here is the payment of dividends is a financing activity. The proceeds from issuance of stock is a financing activity. The collection from customers is an operating activity, so I'm going to have collection from customer, and that's $213,000. Then I have proceeds from the sale of land. Okay, that's an investing activity. Payment to suppliers, that is a operating activity. So I put it here, payment to suppliers. And that amount is $92,000, right? 92,000. Purchase of equipment with cash. Okay, I'm buying equipment. That is an investing activity. Oops, investing activity. Payments to employees. Okay, that is an operating activity for 67,000. Payment to employees for 67,000. Okay, that's money going out, so it's a negative. Okay. Then payment of long-term note payable. Okay. That is a financing activity. Right? So I only have 3 operating activities, so my net cash provided by operating activities. So let me rewrite these numbers smaller to make it more. 213, 92,000, and 67,000. And that gives me a total of 54,000 for the net cash provided by the operating activities. Right, since I went down through these transactions and I labeled them, okay, I know which ones are my investing activities. So I have my proceeds from the sale of land, so proceeds from sale of land, and that's 61,000. And then I have the purchase of equipment, so purchase of equipment, and that's 38,000. You know, as I wrote that, and the thought just occurred to me, notice that these numbers are all positive numbers, okay? But when I put it on the statement of cash flows, I have to think about it in terms of which way my cash went. When I'm purchasing equipment, you know, the purchase of equipment, if I was creating a journal entry and I was creating, you know, it would be a debit to my equipment, which would be a plus for my equipment because it's increasing. But we're looking at this from a cash perspective, okay? I'm paying for that purchase of equipment with cash. So it's 38,000 that's come out of my pocket. So that's why I write a negative number, even though all of these numbers here are positive numbers, okay? It's your effect on your cash that you're putting on the statement of cash flows. Right, so those are the only 2 that I have. So I have my, you know, and this is relatively easy, net cash, you know, this is standard net cash provided by investing activities, right? And that total amount is 23,000. And then we put in our financing activities. So I had payment of dividend of 16,000, right? That's a negative 16,000 because we're paying out cash to pay for the dividend. It's a cash dividend. Cash is going out, right? So it's a negative 16,000. Proceeds from the issuance of stock. Proceeds from issue of stock. Well, that's money coming in, okay? Because why? We're selling the stock and we're getting the cash for it. So that's a positive 21,000, all right? And then the last thing is the payment of long-term notes payable. And since we're paying that money out, paying on it, 41,000 is what is coming out of the cash account. So our net cash provided by financing activities ends up being a negative $36,000. Right? So my net increase in cash, in this case here, when I add up these 3 numbers, ends up being $41,000. Okay. Now we go and we say, okay, what was our cash balance? from the end of the previous year. And in this case here, it's June 30th, 2013. And it tells us that amount was $23,000 right here. Okay, so that's 23,000. So now our cash balance for 6/30/2014 is $64,000. Okay, and a double underline there. Right, so pretty much that's, if you did the previous exercise and you did this exercise, you can see that this, if you actually physically did it on your own or following along, you're able to see that, I'm doing it basically the same way in this step-by-step fashion, right? All I have to do is just determine what information goes on the statement, where it goes, and whether it's a positive or negative number, okay? But the procedure for it is basically the same, all right? You don't really deviate from it that much, all right? And again, this is my working papers, okay? I want to make this clear. These are my working papers, okay? This is not what you hand to somebody else. If you hand something to somebody else, you actually have to create the statement of cash flows with all of the proper formatting. Taking an exam, you're giving that solution to somebody else, so you have to create it in the proper format, all right? All right, so that's it for this exercise, and if you still have any questions, feel free to contact an instructor, and I'll see you in the next video for the next exercise.